Welcome to Activate Your Introvert, the weekly show to help you recognise and unlock the entrepreneur skills in your business. In this week's episode, we talk about recruitment and introversion. There are ideas for introverts looking for jobs and how phrases business owners and recruiters use often can exclude 40% of their potential recruits. Kiera Tsenti is a writer and business owner who spent most of her career as a recruiter. Now she runs her own business, Hire Right Talent. But first it's time for Introvert Myth of the Week. Introverts are not team players and don't like being part of a team. I'm not afraid to dump this one straight into the rubbish bin. Team building and getting teams to work effectively together is a sensible thing at any time. Several people are thinking about it at the moment as the country slowly comes out of lockdown, and I've been talking with several people about their team. This myth has come up quite a few times. Now, the reality is that many of the introverts I've spoken to on this very subject like being an important part of a cohesive team. What they don't always like is being made to do odd, pointless exercises when there are no team bonds there in the first place. It's an interesting one to consider if you're looking to improve your team, whether through team building or through just improving your team meetings. My book, Running Meetings That Make Things Happen, is now available on Amazon, and there's a link on the show notes, of course, and it unpicks several of similar issues so you can run meetings where your whole team engage, introverts and extroverts. Having a role in the team is something many introverts actually recommend as the way they've managed to get far more from teams or organisations that they've been in. So that's certainly not about avoiding teams. Do let me know what introvert myth you'd like exposed, or what tip you'd like that would help you to activate the entrepreneurial skills in your business. I'd also love to hear your feedback about this series on the Apple iTunes Store or podchaser.com. Please take a moment after the show. And finally, if you'd like to talk to me about speaking at your conference, virtual or face-to-face, or working with your team, I'd love to hear from you. But now, let's get on with this week's interview. Welcome, Kiera. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm really well. It's a nice sunny day for once as well. So, start with a really boring question. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert. I think that's an interesting question.
Good. I'm pleased. But what's that meant to you?
It was a moment where I discovered who I was for the first time. I discovered I wasn't broken. I wasn't somehow wrong.
Oh, wow. So I'm probing a little bit. Tell me a bit more about that if it's not too painful.
Oh, that's fine. I've always been confident, so I never really looked into introversion when I was younger. But I've always had a problem with things like crowds, girly nights out, getting dolled up, certain types of pressure, certain types of stress, and I never associated it with introversion or personality type or anything like that. I always just looked for other things that could have been wrong with me, things to blame, I suppose. And discovering I was an introvert I found, a major step on my own journey towards greater self-awareness and towards discovering my strengths. So
brilliant. Okay, so understanding what introversion was and that you weren't broken, as you said, meant that you could start to work out your strengths. What impact did that have on you? Because you were used to be into recruitment, weren't you?
Yes, and this is all connected. So recruitment is famously a sales-orientated profession. And again, I was always confident enough on the surface to do all that stuff, but I absolutely hated it. picking up the phone was really not for me. And I'm not unique. It wasn't for a lot of people, but it really did. It spurred a reaction in me, speaking to people who didn't want me to be speaking to them and trying to sell something that I didn't believe in. All that stuff really wasn't comfortable for me. I did recruitment for a long time, nearly 10 years, because I was able to really get it on the candidate side, which I think a lot of recruiters historically have struggled with, because they've been taught to focus on it as a sales position and often to oversell. Whereas I focused on it from the other side. What does this candidate want? What does this client want? How can you marry the two? And how can you succeed as a recruiter by focusing on getting people's needs met?
That's quite interesting. That's quite interesting, actually, because a couple of months ago I was interviewing Ben Kench. Ben wrote the Selling for Dummies book, and we were talking about selling, obviously, as you do, and he was saying actually a lot of the best salespeople are introverts because they look at it from the other side, which is, and you're kind of coming back with the same piece there.
Yeah, absolutely. So no one who I worked for in recruitment would have called me one of the best salespeople, but they certainly would have called me one of the strongest recruiters. And I got results in that sense, which were all measured by money. And in a former life, when I was a lot younger and a lot more confident, blind confidence, you might call it, I did sales, which is another way. I didn't realize that I was an introvert even later when I had these problems, because my entire career up to date suggested otherwise. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Now, while we were talking before we started this discussion, you shared with me a lovely phrase that I've seen on a lot of job descriptions and job adverts, which makes the introvert side of me go cold. Maybe this is where the problem is, but phrases like, we need an enthusiastic, dynamic team player who is outgoing with excellent people skills.
Yeah,
seems to cut out most introverts from ever applying for any job at all.
Indeed. Yeah, it's a stock phrase that you see you certainly used to see on most job ads. I don't know how much that's changed now, but my business works actively towards changing that, because one of the things that we do is we write job ads.
So tell us a bit more about that.
So we write creative and people focused, and by people focused I mean focused on the person who the job is designed to attract, on their needs, on their experiences, on their desires, on their interests, as opposed to writing what 90 to 95% of job ads are, which is a long wish list on behalf of a company, everything that they could possibly think of and the rest just in case, and stock phrases like that included, which aren't actually what they need, because you could have that written for a department where people just don't talk to each other and they'd really rather you didn't. They'd rather you just get the job done. But because it hasn't been thought through, they'll just include those phrases. They've been given that information as well, to be fair, on these companies by job boards. Job boards just give out lazy information all the time. If they were conscious of neurodiversity, which introversion I think comes under this banner, they wouldn't write it, because they see it from the angle we're seeing it from. But this is almost revolutionary thinking, if you get my drift.
So from if I was looking to employ some people then, and particularly was interested in, as you put it, neurodiversity, which I think is a great phrase. In other words, I recognise that I need some introverts, I need some balance in the team. What should I do? How would I go about doing that from a job ad point of view?
Well, recognise that phrases like that are exclusive, like we've just spoken about. Think about who you're trying to attract and what the job actually needs. If you're looking for someone who communicates actively with customers, if you're looking for someone in sales, then maybe it's perfectly valid, and that's fine. You'll leave it in there. It doesn't need to be in there for basically every job ad, and that's the problem. It is just people not taking the time. When you list information for soft skills, it tends to be the same few things: motivated, enthusiastic. These words have lost all meaning in job ads because they're just repeated without any thoughts. So if you want to bring some balance into your team, think about what is actually missing. And when you think about that, what you're also thinking about is where your blind spots are, because companies are missing this all the time at the moment.
Okay, no, that's so great tip for those that are looking to employ people, to think clearly about what you're actually looking for rather than taking on board all these stock phrases. And I guess from a recruitment background, as you think about your own introverted history, if I put it like that, what tip would you offer introverts that were looking to get a new job, say?
It's harder, I think, for introverts in many cases because the interview process lends itself better to extroverts. And I just think that giving yourself permission to struggle, if it is indeed a struggle, and if it isn't, I'm not asking you to now adopt that as a struggle. No, if you're good at this, fantastic, well done to you. But if it is currently a struggle, which it has been for me, and have been a recruiter and a confident introvert, and yet I've always struggled with interviews. I just think give yourself that permission to find it difficult, and give yourself that space to recover as well between experiences related to job searching, because it's a lot of work, and take time to sort of build a profile online as well. LinkedIn is a real asset if you use it well. You don't have to just rely on job boards and doing things the way a company has set up for you to do it. You can meet people, you can network. There are a lot of things you can do. It's challenging at the moment because of the COVID economy, but certain ways of putting yourself out there actually lend themselves better to introverts. And I would say the whole personal branding piece, it can lend itself better to certain introverts. I know a lot of the copywriting community, for example, are introverted. So that means if you happen to already think you're good at writing on Twitter, take that skill, move it to LinkedIn. You can start at any time.
So very much think about your skills, and as you said, take space back to realise, become more self-aware, and don't worry about the stuff. Don't worry about having to perform in the way that, say, extroverts or other people do. Focus on your own strengths. That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Kiera. Should any of the listeners want to get hold of you and perhaps ask you for some more advice or get you to help with some web copy, how would they do that?
Find me on LinkedIn, Kiera Tsenti. I'm there most days. You can find my company, Hire Right Talent. We're on LinkedIn as well. Or you can check out our website. And I'm always up for a chat, especially about introversion and the personality.
Brilliant. Thank you. We have completely run out of time, but it was such a good conversation. I just thought, I'm going to keep going. But what I will do, I'll put your website address in the sleeve notes for this particular episode so that anyone can just click on that and find you straight away.
Excellent.
Been brilliant to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.